The peopling of North America from the Ice Age to the eve of the Civil War. The North American continent formed as a result of the Ice Age, and due to the land bridge with Asia, nomadic hunters came down across the west coast of North America and diffused across both North and South continents. So by the time the first Europeans encountered North America, massive Native American tribal populations were scattered across the land. Around 1000 CE, three-sister farming emerged and created high production of corn, beans, and squash, which led to large population boom. It was this existence that the Europeans stumbled upon in early 1400s. Starting in 1450, the Portuguese began to move towards sub-Saharan Africa. They quickly colonized parts of Africa, resulting in the initiation of slavery. This was important to North America because it led to the expansion of slavery and the prosperous slave trade that America's southern economy would be built off of, as well as eventually leading to the Civil War. But that's later on. In competition, Spain expanded westward in search of more power and a larger empire, coming across the North American continents where they too quickly colonized the natives. This was significant to North America because the Spanish Empire expanded north into present-day southwest USA, California, Texas, and Florida. Much farther north, the French had moved into present-day Canada and were slowly migrating south due to the shortage of natural resources. They soon gained a strong presence throughout the Midwest. Finally, in 1492, under the Spanish monarchs, seaman Christopher Columbus sailed west in search of a new route to the wealthy East Indies, but came across America instead. He saw promise in the new land and quickly brought the news back to Europe. Europe immediately began to invade North America, resulting in the Columbian Exchange. Subsequently, this led to the annihilation and decimation of native populations, due to the fact that they had no immunity to European diseases such as smallpox. The British, eager to stake their own claim in the New World, sent a group of British colonists to form the very primitive Jamestown settlement in Virginia, thus planting the first British roots in North America. These settlers rapidly began to expand and diffuse, prompting the Great Migration. The Puritans, one of the three prominent groups of people, were a group of Christian reformers from England who fled due to religious persecution, the desire for more land, and a strong development of faith and community. They arrived in New England and quickly took it over, forming a successful but exclusive society. The Puritans meshed church and state together and were significant due to the long-lasting religious prominence in developing America, especially in New England. The second group of people were the indentured servants, who were lower-class peasants brought by the British for work and labor in exchange for their freedom. Once their freedom was gained, these colonists typically moved west, settling away from the eastern seaboard. The Quakers were the much smaller third group, who also moved away from the expanding eastern seaboard, settling in Philadelphia, and most importantly, bringing religious tolerance to the surrounding region. This tolerance was precious and could not be found anywhere, causing Philadelphia to become a popular destination for many immigrants. If we head south, we see the extent of the British colonization, for they had also invaded the southern eastern seaboard, quickly forming tight communities that developed into Virginia, the Carolinas, Kentucky, etc. These settlers were heavily agrarian, resulting in the significant formation of the vital plantation system. This system, above all else, relied on slave labor for crop cultivation. The British seized the Portuguese discovery of slavery and rapidly founded one of the greatest slave trades in history. The increasing number of African slaves to the south caused diffusion of white settlers and their slave property further west, where the British expanded their influence in North America and pushed the Native Americans that hadn't died westward as well. However, Georgia stood out amongst the southern colonies, for it acted as a buffer zone between the fighting Frenchmen in Louisiana and the Spanish in Florida. It also attracted immigrants, for it did not permit slavery and had the prized religious toleration. The prosperous slave trade resulted in huge economic success for the South, mostly in the form of cash crops such as tobacco in Virginia and rice in the Carolinas, providing strength to the rapidly developing nation. The French and Indian War lasted from 1754 to 1763, prompted by border conflict on the frontier between France and England. At the end of the 7 years, the French were expelled from the Midwest of North America, never to return, and the British were once again expanded their empire through gradual settlement of the newly claimed territory. Yet the colonists of the New World were becoming increasingly annoyed and angered at the British, for they felt too repressed and underrepresented. This tension exploded into the Revolutionary War, which of course we all know the Americans won and the British got kicked out for good. giving rise to the opportunity to expand as a unified nation. The Americans' dream of expansion came true thanks to Jefferson and his Louisiana Purchase in 1803, which doubled the national territory, and subsequently migration, both foreign and internal, dramatically increased. Mostly comprised of farmers who were not prospering, inquisitive explorers, and southern plantation owners in search of more land, the migration westward officially began, yet it did not formally take off until years later. By 1820, expansion had increased to a point that Missouri requested statehood, but wanted slavery to be allowed in their territory. This prompted the Missouri Compromise, which directly affected migration, for not only did it admit Maine as a free state, it prohibited slavery in all new states above the line 3630. The Southerners were angry at this, for it reduced potential plantation land, prompting them to quickly claim as much westward land as they could. This action led to the great nationwide concept of manifest destiny. Manifest destiny, the belief that Americans were destined by God to expand their nation westward, was the main initiator in the migration surges in the mid-1800s. This coincided with the Second Great Awakening, which caused renewed religious revitalization and led to the formation of the Church of Latter-day Saints, which then migrated to Utah and expanded, along with many other utopian communities. The people that suffered the most were the Native Americans, particularly the Cherokee, who were forced by the militia to march across the Appalachians into the western designated Indian lands according to the Indian Removal Act of 1830. This resulted in the confinement of Native Americans and withdrawal and absence from the majority of the West's future. One of the main events that was significant to the West was the Oregon Trail, which began in St. Louis and ended in Oregon Territory. People embarked on this journey for a variety of reasons, including persecution, cheap land, the promise of freedom, or just a fresh start. Almost overnight, the Oregon Territory filled with covered wagons and small communities of diverse people, resulting in both economic contribution to the national government through logging, as well as solidifying the core economic belief of expansion, ultimately leading to today's present population. California developed much like Oregon, except with a focus on mining, leading to the Great Gold Rush, along with population expansion and American influence along the entire western seaboard. Now, on to Texas, which was the territory populated by expansionist Americans, but disputed over with Mexico, leading directly to the Mexican-American War in the 1840s. Of course, we know the outcome of the war, since America always seems to win their wars, but victory was significant because it established the Mexican-American boundary, annexed Texas to the USA, and most importantly, it ceded America all territory north of the border that stretched west to the Pacific, allowing for the significant uninterrupted expansion of American people across the continent. Manifest destiny was now complete. However, immigration was not, and the mid-1800s saw off-the-chart immigration rates, mostly from the Irish and the Germans. Although the Germans had been here since the Revolutionary War, the Irish had little presence in America until the Irish potato famine in the 1840s, causing the docks to suddenly swarm with poor foreigners, expanding major northeastern cities to incorporate the constantly growing Irish population. The intense backlash and protest against the invading Irish was the nativist response, whose supporters saw the Irish as an economical and social threat, since they would work for lower wages, were very neighborly with the alcohol, and belonged to the Catholic faith. The Germans also belonged to the Catholic faith, having left Germany due to political strife and economic unrest. However, the Germans had money, which meant they moved westward immediately, and populated cities began to emerge in the Midwest, along with many German and Catholic communities that chugged alcohol in amounts never seen before. These factors caused some backlash, but because they were more spread out, it was not felt as much as the Irish. The steam engine and other technological devices have helped facilitate migration in America, which has gone from an unpopulated continent to a land of Native Americans to a land of Europeans, so that by the eve of the Civil War, the United States of America stretches from sea to shining sea.